Bueno, estamos próximos a llamar a nuestra próxima speaker. Ella es Donna Spencer, consultora líder en Redify, con más de 20 años de experiencia en distintas industrias, speaker, escritora y líder UX en MadMove. Un aplauso para Donna. ¡Woo!
Hola a todos. Soy Donna, soy australiana, mi español no es muy bueno, entonces I will give my talk in English. I've been speaking on stage since I was about 6, and that was the hardest thing I've ever done, introducing myself in Spanish. And of course, it's the first thing you learn in Spanish class, but it's still really scary when you're about to do it. I'm going to do a very practical talk for you today, all about how to present your design work to clients, to stakeholders, and to each other. A little about me first. You can find me on the internet as Madonna. One day, Madonna will answer me, and it will make my life. I've been this kind of designer for a very long time. I've worked in all kinds of industries. I have worked freelance, in-house, done lots of different things. And I have 2 old books that are still oldies but goodies. So I wrote a book on card sorting that was published by Rosenfeld Media, and the green one is a Practical Guide to Information Architecture. Both of these you can get as ebooks. They're like 10 years old, but they're still really, I didn't rewrite them because they're good foundational books. People tell me they're good, they tell me they like them. So my talk today is all about presenting your work to stakeholders, clients, each other, etc. This is absolutely a fundamental skill for designers. I think it's a fundamental skill for professionals as well, and even the things I talk about today will just help you with life. And the reason that I wanted to present a very practical topic for you, and this particular topic, is in 20 years of work and in 10 years of running a major conference, I've only once seen somebody teach how to do this, and that was Mike Montero. And from him, I learned how to teach clients how to give feedback. I had already been working probably 17 years before somebody taught me how to ask for good feedback. And I was like, wow, I think we all could do this a lot better. I think we all make our mistakes, stumble through, fall over, don't get our work accepted, have people give us feedback we can't use. So I've got lots and lots of tips for you on how to do this better. So let's pretend the situation is you've done some work on a project. You might be partway through a project, you might be towards the end, you might be in early. But you've made some design work and you're ready to show it and explain what you've come up with. Before diving into the details, there's a couple of things that are worth setting up front. First is giving your listeners just enough background to know what the context is. So what have you done already? What is the business problem you're solving today? But just enough. Don't go back on the whole project history. Don't try to catch them up. Just give them enough information so they know where you're up to. Tell them why they are there and what their job is today. This is super important. If you don't help your listeners understand why they're there, and then you ask them for feedback, they will give you feedback, but it just won't be anything that you can use. So if they have a particular expertise, so if they're business people, their role might be to give you feedback on whether this idea will work for the business. If they're developers, their role might be to give feedback on whether it's technically possible, but give them that, like tell them what their job is today. It will really set them up. It will help them to listen to you and to know what kind of feedback to give. While I'm talking about that, I will tell you that we will have questions at the end of this. So your job, while I give this talk, is to listen and think about your situation and have some questions ready. So I can set you up for that and you can set your stakeholders up, ready to give you good feedback. Tell them also what you need out of today. Do they need to make a decision to sign it off? Do they need to give you feedback? Do they just need to listen and not do anything yet? So also tell them like what happens at the end. Then when you're ready to show your design, this is the thing I see newer designers do most wrong. When you're ready to show something, show the thing that you came up with. Show your end result. That may not make any sense. What I see more inexperienced designers do is they say, so we did this thing, and then we did that thing, and then we thought about that, and we did that sketch, and then we talked to some people, and then things, and they show you things, and you're like, what are you telling me? I don't want to know about all the things you threw away. Don't tell me you did that one and that one and that one. Just tell me what you came up with. Just tell me the answer. And I know it seems a bit odd, but that is the thing I see. And I was talking to somebody about it last night. Like, when you've been working for a few weeks and you've thought hard about all the things, you feel like you should tell that story, but nobody cares. I've stopped my designers mid-sentence and said, look, I know what you're trying to do. I don't care. Just stop and tell me where you got to. If something that you threw away or something that you thought of or something that was difficult needs to be explained, it will be, you can explain it when people ask questions about it. So dive in, tell them the solution, not the process that you got to with the solution. Second most common thing I see more inexperienced designers do is doing a real estate tour, showing what's on the page. So we've got a logo here, and we've got a hero image there, and we've got some copy about the thing, and we've got some different kind of copy, a bit more detail, and there's top navigation at the top. That's where top navigation goes. Don't do that. That is boring. It doesn't help people listen, and it doesn't help them focus. Instead, tell a story of a person doing a thing. So, for example, you set up the scenario. I was loosely kind of doing a recipe website. You can't tell that, but, you know. The person wants to find a recipe for noodles. They come to our website, they see a list of dishes, they choose one, they read it. We then try to get them to sign up for more. I don't know what that story is. But instead of, we've got these things on the page, tell a story of the person is doing a thing. If you need to tell lots of variations of that, do it again. So in a different situation, the person does this different thing. In a different situation, when it's a different persona or a less common scenario, do it again. A person doing a thing. There's lots of value in doing this. It helps people see a flow. It helps them see a usable solution. It helps them see how things hang together. And it doesn't focus them on the things that are on the page. The other really good thing you can do with this and telling a person, a story of a person doing a thing, is you can include things like accessibility needs. So you can do this and say, for example, a blind person using a screen reader would do it like this. Someone with colour blindness would see it like this. Someone with their audio turned off would experience it like this. So you can tell just lots of stories. We know that humans love stories, so this stuff will stick in people's heads better than what did I put on the screen. They're my two best tips, actually. Also, make sure that you tell not just the user story, but what business problem does this solve. Most often you'll be presenting to business people. They definitely want to know what the user story is, but you're not presenting to users. You're presenting to people who have KPIs or goals to meet or costs to reduce. So you need to know what they need from you and what the problem is you're solving. I a lot of times see designers who don't understand business well and can't do this bit well. They can't explain it, which means they also can't design it well. So if you're already thinking, oh, I have to present what the business problem was, you'll be better at designing for that as well. And lastly, think about the questions that people are going to ask you and be ready for them. So this is about preparing to give a great presentation and not having to think on your feet quite so much. Of course, sometimes thinking about what will people ask me, you don't know because they haven't asked you, but you can think about things like if you're presenting regularly. I've worked in teams where every single week the same person asks the same question. They're going to ask it again. Get ready for it. You'll look really like on the ball and professional if you are ready for them to ask that question. Sometimes people will be like, we are all selfish. They will often ask you how this thing affects their team. How does this affect a persona that they know well about? Also the things that while you were doing that design work, what did your team ask you most? What did the developer say, what are you doing there? Those questions will come up again when you're presenting with stakeholders. So get ready for them so that you can say, I thought about that. This is how it works. Sometimes, especially when I'm presenting to business people who aren't very comfortable with technology, kind of new to a project or new to a tech project, I'll just say, one of the things I'm expecting you to ask is this. I know that you're going to say such and such. And the good thing about doing that is that you can give them the question and the answer together and they feel, oh, okay, I don't need to ask a question. Yay. So that can let them off the hook as well. So how about actually presenting, being in front of people, doing a presentation? Present your work. Don't email a link to people and say, please give me feedback. It's really, like even when we set up our prototypes super well, it's really confusing trying to click around something, find out where is clickable, what you can do with it, what you're meant to be focusing on, where you're meant to be looking, what kind of feedback am I after. If you do that to people and just say, here's a link, give me feedback, you will get terrible feedback. Like you just will, they don't know what to say to you. So present your work, even if that means presenting it remotely, like putting it on a screen share, doing a call, that's okay. But then you get to tell the story. You get to tell the story of a person doing a thing. You get to highlight and show off the pieces that they should be focusing on. You get to listen to questions. So do that. Once you're in the run with a team and you've been working with them for a fair while, you can start to send a link, but definitely present until they get used to working with you and until you've taught them how to give good feedback. Own the room. Stand up. Don't sit at a computer and try to do this and try to talk to them. Like you see how my energy is really down when I sit down at a computer and try to present a thing. When you stand up in front of people and you're physical and you move around, like the way our peripheral vision works is that movement makes us look up. But you're like, oh. So of course I always talk with all my hands. And I have these crazy tattoos that people just like see. They can't not look at me. I might as well just make an obvious note of it. It's funny how I can see people watching my arms. Funny when I see people staring at me on the train. I'm like, why are they staring at me? Oh yeah, this one's new. I'm just getting used to the staringness. But when you are in front of people, talking, moving, they will pay attention to you. Much better than if you have to sit down. If you're giving a presentation where you do need to do a demo of a person doing a thing, if it's a really important presentation, get somebody else to run the demo. It's really hard to tell a story, remember where to click, type in fake data and make mistakes and backspace and then you get flustered because you're typing and people are looking at you and it's scary. Get somebody else to run the demo. Get them to click, rehearse it, but present well, tell a good story. Be very careful with jargon. If you are telling a story of a person doing a thing, you won't do this anyway. But again, this is something I see newer designers do. They're uncomfortable, they don't know what to talk about. So they talk about hamburger menus and H1s and H2s and line spacing and typography and hero images and modal overlays and primary CTAs. And the audience are like, what am I meant to do with that? If you know what the audience are going to tell you, they're going to give you feedback on H1, be a H1 on the page, and line spacing, and what typeface to use, and what colour. You don't want that feedback. That isn't what you're asking for. You can talk with your developer and designer colleagues about this, but don't do this with your clients. But if you tell a story of a person doing a thing, you won't go there anyway. Primary CTAs. Every time somebody says that to me, I'm like, similarly to not being able to do a demo and run a story and look at a room, don't try to take notes yourself as people ask you things and tell you things. Get somebody else to do that. It doesn't have to be a design colleague. It could be one of your developer colleagues. It could be somebody in the room, but get somebody else to take those notes. Just don't do it yourself. Sometimes your job is to tell bad news. Your job isn't to be in front of that room and be liked. We want to be liked. This is why we show a thing and then we go, what do you think? Sometimes your job is to stay in front of the room. We did this because we know you're not going to agree, but here are the reasons. Your job is to be professional, to represent your team and be a great designer, not to be the nicest person in the room. And I know that's kind of silly, but I'm sure we've all done it. I'm sure we're like, please like me. Please, I'm really good at this. I've done it. So usually the purpose of doing a presentation is to get feedback. We don't want to get any feedback. We want to get feedback that we can do something with that moves the design forward. We don't want to get feedback that is just positive. So that's why I said great feedback, not good feedback. It's not like positive feedback. We want feedback that we can really do something with, that's constructive and helpful and makes us a better team. And as I said, I had worked and done this for a long time before I did a workshop with Mike Montero, and he taught how to get great feedback. And his key point was, we as designers don't teach our clients how to give good feedback. And in my career, I've worked with lots and lots of teams who have never done a tech project before. They don't know how these things work. They don't know how you get from the beginning of the project to the end. It's really new to them. And so when you say, what do you think? Give me feedback. They also don't know what to do with that. And that's where you'll get just kind of rubbishy feedback, like I don't like the colour, or it looks a bit confusing. So we need to go through a process of teaching our clients, our stakeholders, how to give good feedback and what that looks like. And if you can do that, my goodness, your team will be great. You'll work together well, you'll respect each other a lot more, and the product will be much better. So spend time teaching them. I'll give you some tips on how to actually give you good feedback. So when you're in a session, again, explain the scope. Explain, we are looking at this thing today. We are not talking about those things we already decided on. We're not talking about the things that are in the future. We need to focus on this bundle of design elements, whatever it is. So tell them what is in and out of feedback. Otherwise, they'll tell you, drives me crazy when I'm like, yeah, we talked about that last week, we resolved it. We talked about that the week before, and every single week you do the same thing. We can stop that happening. The feedback they give, you need to help them learn how to be specific and give you examples. So, I don't like it. I don't think the colour's good. It's a bit confusing. It looks really cluttered. That is not useful. You can't do anything with that. But feedback that says, I understand what you did there. This persona does different tasks that don't fit in that flow is great feedback. You can go, okay, I learned a new thing today. We can do something with that. Feedback like that terminology is not the terminology that my group uses is good feedback. So they need to be, if they don't have anything to say, they don't need to say anything. So they need to be able to give you something specific and give you examples of why a thing works or doesn't work. So you might ask them questions like, tell me that your job today is to tell me, does this work for the core tasks of the people you know? I love that you're like taking photos of my terrible hand drawings. Questions like, are there situations where this won't work for somebody? Are there any technical or legal or business issues that I don't know about that mean we can't move forward? That's concrete and detailed and actionable. So not, do you like it or what do you think? I think most cultures in which I've worked, feedback is always critical. We can teach people to give us positive feedback as well and to ask questions. And that actually gives a really well-rounded feedback, not just this doesn't work for my users, but this works really well. I can see, I can understand, I understand what's going on there. And you should be encouraging people to react and give you good feedback as well. I've seen a couple of good models for this. You don't have to use a model. There's just some that kind of work. This one is a model from Stanford D School, and it's called I Like, I Wish, What If? I've also seen it as I Like, I Wish, I Wonder. And so you can say, when you give me feedback, I want you to say, I like, I wish, what if? So I like that you considered a range of users in that design. I wish I understood how it works for so-and-so. What if we explore that next week? Sometimes I feel this one is a little clumsy. Sometimes it doesn't work well. But while you're teaching people to give you feedback and how to give feedback, it's worth trying to give them a bit of a model for it, especially to help them focus on telling you a positive thing and asking a question. Literally while I was finishing off my slides yesterday, I saw this tweet from Per Axboom, and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I needed. So his questions are, what do you like most about what you saw? Is there anything you believe could become a problem? What are you most worried about in future changes? What are you looking forward to? I would change this slightly, and for number one, I would say something more like what works well for a task, not what do you like? We use the like word for substitutes for all kinds of things, but you can be more concrete with what works well. Otherwise, those questions are good ones. They help people think critically and think about what they're saying and why, and to give you examples for it. So I thought that model was fairly good too. You also will need to think about, are you taking feedback right now, or are you taking feedback later on? And there are pros and cons to this, and I can't figure out which I like better. I'm going to go this way. The benefit of getting feedback later is that people can actually think about what they need to tell you. You can give them a link, say, to a prototype. They can look around it. They can think about the tasks that their team or users do. They can come back to you with something quite well considered and quite thought out. It'll be good, useful feedback. You'll also get more coverage of issues that'll come up because they have had time to think about it. Of course, the disadvantage of that, try to find where am I on the slide? The disadvantage is that it's slow. You have to wait for them to give you the feedback. And because you've made a gap between now and the feedback, you might get people who tell you the opposite things. And that's okay, you just have to deal with that later. The advantage of getting feedback now is that you can get a group to actually do that discussion. You can get them to talk about together what they think and what works for them. If there are differences in the group, they can resolve those at the time, and you can make a forward plan together for what your next steps are. The disadvantage of that, and this is the biggest one, is that the feedback can be quite shallow. They haven't had time to think it through. It's whatever comes to mind in the moment. There's a social pressure to answer. It can be like, oh, okay, that thing looks cluttered. So I don't love getting people to give feedback on their feet. So you could also do this where in the early stages you give them time, and once you've taught them how to give feedback, they can work together and give you feedback faster. So what do we do with feedback? What we would all really like is for our clients to say, I like what you've done there. It works really well for my customers. Go you. That's our ideal. We would love for that to happen. Of course, that's not what happens. We need to, and this is super hard. It's super hard to go, okay, you've told me a bunch of stuff. You've kind of told me I'm wrong. Oh my goodness. As you grow in your design career, this won't matter to you much, but early on it feels quite confronting. So what are you going to do with it? You want to put it together. You want to just make sure that you've got the feedback in one spot. If you're doing it during a presentation session, sticky notes will be fine, and makes it transparent. If you're going to put it together in a spreadsheet or a backlog manager or something, make it transparent. Let everybody see it. Don't hide this stuff away. Let everybody see what they all contributed. It gives transparency and trust and makes the team work better together. So then you want to categorize it into things that you can do with. So you want to think about what you can do easily now. You're just like, yep, sure, missed that, we'll fix it. Yep, we agree, we need to do a bit more work on it. You need to think about what things are in conflict which will need resolving, that might need a few, some extra sessions. You need to acknowledge what you disagree with and say, okay, we disagree with these things, we're not going to do them. This is the hardest bit to do, is to say, thank you, I listened, I decided not to do something with that, or we did, because it's still a team effort. And what things do you need to follow up with questions? So again, this might just be in the room while you're doing a presentation, or you might have a spreadsheet. Of course, the most difficult one is that disagree column. And your job as a designer, as a design team, as a product team is to say, thank you, we heard what you said, we are not doing it for these reasons. And they need to be good, concrete, solid reasons. But if you've gotten good feedback because you've taught people how to give you feedback and they've been constructive, this isn't so hard. You'll usually be able to say, that feature is technically very difficult. That feature we know about and is only used by a few people. Yes, that's really important, but these other things are more important, so we'll put that off and we'll discuss it later. You must tell people why you said no. Otherwise, they just won't trust you anymore. They'll be like, well, you asked me for feedback and I gave feedback and you didn't listen anyway, so why would I do it twice? But like, that is just super hard. Then you go back and start all over again. Next feature, next lot of feedback, next designs, next lot of feedback. And you get better and better and better, and you work better with your team, and they learn how to give you feedback, and they learn how to talk with each other better, and they learn what things to focus on, and they learn how to use their expertise, and you all win at making great things. So your next steps, because, I'm going to give you some jobs to do. I told you I would at the front. I'm trying to, apply these principles to my own presentation. Your next steps. You can ask me questions now or share your experiences. Tell us a story of something that went badly wrong. You can ask me questions or tell me your stories during the conference. These slides are up already, so that's the link to them. I'll tweet it later on, that'll work. I'm like, how would you even know that? But if you searched for presenting design work, you should find it. Later, like some point in a couple of months, let me know how you went. Tell me whether I wish, what if worked. Tell me if you set up the scope better and people gave you good feedback. Tell me if your clients are getting better at doing that. Tell me what I haven't told you that is still failing for you. Help me get better by giving me that feedback. But I'm letting you reflect on it, give it some time to practice, and then ask me. Easiest way to do that is probably LinkedIn. And I'm fairly findable on the internet, as long as you don't confuse me with the lady who actually sings. Thank you very much. So we do have time for questions. I have to get the translating thing. I couldn't manage to have two things in my head at the same time. Thank you. Oh, they're tied together. Okay. Ooh. It's really weird hearing myself in my head.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for sharing. I have a question related to what you just talked about. We're a team that works in Argentina with clients in the US and in the UK. And when we present, we have some issues because we're working remotely. So sometimes they cannot see us because of the camera, they don't have it on, or they're seeing the slides, but they're not seeing us. Do you have any tips for remote presentation?
So when you're doing remote presentations, clearly you can't move your body and get people to listen to you and do that thing where you get attention. So you have to do it with your voice. You have to overemphasize and be excited and give pitch to your voice. and pace and pauses so that it just doesn't sound like somebody's talking to you in a monotone on the other side of the internet. So it's really hard with the lights. Depending on the technology you use as well, you can probably, that's better, thank you. You could also, like we use Teams, you can do kind of chat in there, so that might help as well. But yeah, mostly really thinking about your voice and rehearsing so that your personality is still in the room while they're listening to you. And of course, then you're mostly going to want them to give you feedback a bit later. It's kind of just too hard to do real-time feedback and discussion while, you know, a bunch of people are on a call, unless your technology is very good. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. Thank you for sharing. I have a lot of new info to work with my team.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you if you have any experience with someone that is presenting but doesn't want or doesn't open to feedback, and how to manage that, or you had any tips?
So if you have someone who isn't really open to feedback, they probably need performance management. Like, it isn't okay. It isn't okay in our profession to be so arrogant that that you think, here's the thing, I am perfect, you can't tell me anything about it. That is not a useful kind of person on a team. Like, it just isn't okay.
I think maybe, you know, like proving the value of feedback, that maybe that. And if you have any methods or you know something about that.
So even also using, like, if they might figure out what's happening for them, like why don't they like listening to feedback? They might have always presented and got bad feedback, and they might just be tired of getting bad feedback. So they could then use these tips, ask people to give good feedback, to ask questions, not just to give negative. So help them learn that it's okay to listen. I also, in my design group, started regular, like weekly critique. So the design team look at each other's work and ask each other questions. So they get used to listening to each other and say, oh yeah, okay, I didn't think of that, before they then present it to a client.
We started like design critiques every week. We are really new in that.
Mm-hmm.
So the team is a little bit lost, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
We are getting used to it. And maybe with more practices, because we there in the team we have a lot of personalities, and we are having a hard time doing this, to be open to feedback. But you gave me a lot of good tips, so thank you very much.
So there's a really, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a really good book called Design Critique by Adam Azari. No, Aaron and Adam Connor, called Design Critique, so that's good. But yeah, it needs time, and a team needs time to be safe with each other. So it doesn't happen immediately, and giving them lots of time to get used to talking to each other before presenting to other people. You might be able to, instead of that designer presenting to the group, get somebody else to present. That way it doesn't feel like I presented and you've told me that I'm not very good. So if somebody else presents, it doesn't feel so personal.
Hola.
Oh, you there?
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask my question in Spanish because I feel
Okay.
more comfortable. So, ¿cómo manejarías el tono de comunicación cuando estás en una presentación de un prototipo o un trabajo en diseño y el cliente está puesto en una posición en la que él es el que no quiere recibir el feedback y está un poco como con una camisa de fuerza en sus decisiones y tú sabes que de pronto ese camino no estaba muy bien tomado y quieres como decirle de buena manera como lo que estás pensando tal vez no es por ahí y nosotros te recomendamos otro camino? He recibido el feedback de que la diseñadora está un poco terca en no querer cambiar su punto de vista, pero pues tú detrás tienes un trabajo y has hecho user research y bueno, has encaminado tu posición hacia una investigación. ¿Cómo manejas ese tono de comunicación para que tú no suenes terco y puedas lograr entrar y cambiar esa posición de acuerdo a lo que tú, pues a tu experiencia y al trabajo que has tenido? Porque he recibido el feedback como de estuvo todo bien, hay hallazgos súper interesantes, pero al final sentimos que la diseñadora estuvo un poco terca. ¿Cómo hacemos para que ese tono de comunicación sea más amigable y logremos entrar ahí como en eso? Thanks.
Okay. Oh, what happened there? I think some of the answer is similar to the answer to your question, is helping people to practice. One of the things that I thought was interesting in your question is you said that sometimes the designers know more about the research and about the customers than the client does. So that's a problem. The customer should know that information so that they can listen, respond, and understand. In my experience, a lot of designers are poor at listening for feedback, think that they know everything, and need. It's maturity is learning how to listen and how to go. Oh, okay, right. I understand your perspective. Yep, got it. I've listened. Now I'm going to do something with it. Designers aren't the experts. We're good at the design piece of work, but often our clients and customers are the ones who know the business really well. So yeah, lots of practice. Thank you. Got all my things? Yep.